My mother, Linda, 54F, said this to me. 26F, yesterday afternoon while I was having what I thought would be a routine check-in about final wedding details. But it was actually the final straw in what has been 6 months of her systematically undermining, criticizing, and sabotaging every aspect of my wedding planning. I'm getting married in 3 weeks to my fiancé Marcus, 28M, and what should have been an exciting, joyful time has instead become a nightmare of family drama, second-guessing, and emotional manipulation that's making me question everything about my relationship with my mother. Let me start from the beginning because this situation has been building for months, and I need outside perspectives on whether I'm overreacting or if my mother really is trying to sabotage my wedding. Marcus and I got engaged 8 months ago, and initially my mom seemed thrilled. She cried happy tears, immediately started talking about dress shopping and venue tours, and offered to contribute financially to the wedding. My dad, 57M, was also excited and supportive. We agreed on a budget where my parents would contribute about 40%, Marcus's parents would contribute 30%, and we cover the remaining 30% ourselves. The first red flag should have been when my mom immediately started talking about her vision for my wedding. She had very specific ideas about venues, colors, flowers, music, and guest lists. When I mentioned that Marcus and I had already discussed some of our preferences, she said, "Oh, honey, you'll change your mind once you see what's actually possible." Marcus and I had envisioned an outdoor garden wedding at this beautiful botanical garden about an hour outside the city. It's where we had our first anniversary picnic. It's meaningful to us, and it fits our style perfectly, romantic, natural, intimate, with about 120 guests. But my mom immediately started pushing for the country club where she and my dad had their wedding reception 30 years ago. "It's so much more elegant," she said. "And it's where our family belongs. People expect a certain level of sophistication for our family weddings." I tried to explain that the botanical garden was important to us and fit our vision better, but my mom launched into a detailed critique of outdoor weddings. Unpredictable weather, bugs, uncomfortable seating, poor acoustics, difficulty for elderly guests, and on and on. "I just want you to really think this through," she said. "This is the most important day of your life, and you only get one chance to make it perfect." I stood firm on the botanical garden, and my mom seemed to accept it, but I could tell she was disappointed. The next issue came with the guest list. Marcus and I wanted to keep things relatively intimate, close family, good friends, people who are actually part of our lives. We made a list of about 120 people, but my mom had different ideas. She wanted to invite extended family members I haven't seen in years, family friends who barely know Marcus, colleagues from her work, and neighbors. Her additions would have brought our guest count to over 200. "These are people who care about our family," she said. "They'll be offended if they're not invited. And some of them invited us to their children's weddings, so we owe them invitations." I explained that we couldn't afford to double our guest count, and that Marcus and I wanted our wedding to be about celebrating with people who are actually close to us. My mom offered to pay for the additional guests, but I said it wasn't about money. It was about the kind of celebration we wanted. That's when she made her first really manipulative comment. "I just hope you won't regret excluding people who have been part of your life for so long. Weddings are about bringing families together, not dividing them." We compromised by adding about 20 people from her list, bringing us to 140 guests total. I thought that was reasonable, but my mom continued to make comments about how small our wedding was going to be and how disappointed various family members were going to be about not being invited. The dress shopping experience was the next major conflict. I had made appointments at 3 bridal salons, and I was excited to find something that made me feel beautiful and confident. The first dress I tried on was absolutely perfect. It was a simple, elegant A-line dress with delicate lace details and a flowing skirt. I felt amazing in it. Marcus's sister, who came with us, loved it, and even the salon consultant said it was stunning on me. But my mom hated it. "It's so plain," she said. "For a wedding this important, don't you want something more dramatic? More memorable?" She kept pushing me to try on bigger, more elaborate dresses with lots of beading, multiple layers, dramatic trains. Every dress I liked, she found something wrong with. "That's not flattering on your figure. The color washes you out. It looks like something you'd wear to a cocktail party, not your wedding. After 3 hours, I was exhausted and discouraged. The dress I'd loved at the beginning suddenly seemed too simple, too boring. My mom convinced me to keep looking at other salons. We went to 2 more salons, and the same pattern repeated. Every dress I gravitated toward, my mom criticized. Every dress she liked, I felt uncomfortable in. Finally, she found a dress she absolutely loved, a massive ball gown with crystals, beading, a huge train, and a price tag that was double our budget. "This is it," she exclaimed. "This is a wedding dress. You look like a princess." I felt like I was playing dress up in someone else's fantasy. The dress was beautiful, but it wasn't me at all. It was heavy, hard to move in, and so elaborate that it would overshadow everything else about the wedding. But my mom was so enthusiastic, and I was so worn down from hours of criticism that I said yes to the dress just to end the ordeal. It wasn't until I got home and saw photos that Marcus had taken during our engagement shoot that I realized how much I regretted the decision. In those photos, I looked like myself, natural, happy, confident. The dress I'd chosen would turn me into someone else entirely. I called the salon the next day and switched back to the first dress I'd tried on, the one I'd originally loved. When I told my mom, she was disappointed and worried that I was settling for less than I deserved. The vendor selection process has been a months-long battle. Every vendor Marcus and I chose, my mom found something to criticize. Our photographer was too artsy and wouldn't take traditional family portraits. Our caterer was too casual for a proper wedding reception. Our florist was inexperienced and wouldn't be able to handle the scale of our event. Our DJ was too young and wouldn't know how to read the room. For each vendor, my mom had alternative suggestions, always more expensive, always more traditional, always aligned with her vision rather than ours. When we stuck with our choices, she'd make comments like, "Well, I just hope everything works out," or "I guess we'll see what happens," that made me question our decisions. The worst part was that she started contacting our vendors directly. I found out when our photographer called me, confused, saying that someone claiming to be the mother of the bride had called with a long list of specific shots she wanted and concerns about the photographer's style. When I confronted my mom about this, she said she was just trying to help and wanted to make sure our vendors understood the importance of the event. I told her that all vendor communications needed to go through Marcus and me, and she agreed, but I later discovered she'd also called our florist to suggest changes to our bouquet design and our caterer to ask about upgrading the menu. Each time, she framed it as "the bride asked me to call," or "we're thinking about some changes." Our vendors started coming to us with conflicting information and requests, and we had to spend time clarifying what we actually wanted versus what my mom had suggested. 3 months ago, things escalated to a new level when my mom started calling our wedding guests directly. It started with her calling my aunt or sister to discuss concerns about the outdoor venue and ask if she thought we should try to convince me to reconsider the location. Then she called my grandmother to talk about how worried she was about some of our vendor choices and how she hoped the wedding wouldn't be a disaster. She called Marcus's parents to coordinate on things they had never discussed with us and to share her concerns about various aspects of our planning. She even called some of our friends to ask if they had noticed that Marcus and I seemed stressed about the wedding planning and if they thought we were in over our heads. I found out about these calls when multiple people reached out to me, concerned and confused. My aunt called to ask if I was having second thoughts about the venue. My grandmother called to offer to pay for better vendors if we were struggling financially. Marcus's parents called to ask if there were problems with our planning that they should know about. When I confronted my mom about the phone calls, she said she was just reaching out to family for support because she was concerned about how stressed Marcus and I seemed about the wedding planning. I told her that she was creating stress by involving other people in our private decisions and undermining our choices with family members. She started crying and said she felt like I was pushing her out of the wedding planning process and that she was only trying to help because she loved me and wanted my wedding to be perfect. 2 months ago, my mom escalated to emotional manipulation tactics that were more direct and hurtful. She started making comments about how Marcus and I were so young and maybe rushing into things. She'd say things like, Are you sure you two are ready for marriage? Planning a wedding together is supposed to bring couples closer, but you both seem so stressed and overwhelmed. When I pointed out that most of our stress was coming from her interference, she said, "If planning a wedding together is this difficult, how are you going to handle real marriage challenges?" She started questioning our compatibility. Marcus seems to have such different tastes from you. Are you sure you want the same things in life? And I've noticed that you two argue more now than you used to. Is that something you should be concerned about? The arguments she was referring to were almost exclusively about wedding planning, and specifically about how to handle her interference. She also started making comments about our financial situation. Are you sure you can afford this wedding? It seems like you're stretching yourselves pretty thin. And maybe you should consider a smaller, simpler wedding until you're more established in your careers. These comments were particularly frustrating because our budget was reasonable, we'd planned carefully, and we were well within our means. 1 month ago, my mom's behavior reached a new low when she tried to turn my bridal party against me. She called my maid of honor, my best friend since college, and told her that she was worried about my mental state and thought I was becoming a bridezilla who was impossible to please. She told my bridesmaids that she was concerned about my relationship with Marcus because we seemed to be fighting all the time about wedding decisions. She suggested that maybe they should stage an intervention to talk to me about whether I was really ready to get married. My maid of honor called me immediately after the conversation, horrified and confused. "Your mom seems to think you're having a breakdown," she said. "But you've been totally reasonable about everything. What is going on?" When I explained the situation, my maid of honor was furious. "She's trying to sabotage your wedding," she said. "This isn't normal mother of the bride behavior." The conversation with my bridal party led to a confrontation with my mom that was one of the worst fights we've ever had. I told her that calling my friends to spread concerns about my mental state and my relationship was completely unacceptable and that she needed to stop interfering in my wedding planning immediately. My mom broke down crying and said that she was just trying to protect me because she could see that I was making mistakes that would ruin my special day. She said that as my mother, it was her job to guide me and help me make better decisions, even if I didn't appreciate it in the moment. I told her that guidance was different from sabotage and that undermining me with vendors, guests, and my bridal party was not helpful. It was destructive. She said that she felt like I didn't value her opinion or experience and that I was shutting her out of one of the most important events in our family. I tried to explain that I valued her input, but that the final decisions needed to be mine and Marcus's, and that she needed to respect our choices even if she disagreed with them. But my mom said that she couldn't just stand by and watch me make decisions that she thought were wrong, especially when she was contributing financially to the wedding. That's when I realized that she was using her financial contribution as leverage to try to control our decisions. 3 weeks ago, my mom's behavior escalated to what I can only describe as active sabotage. She called our venue to ask about backup plans in case of bad weather, implying that we hadn't thought through the logistics properly. The venue coordinator called us, confused, because we'd already discussed weather contingencies extensively. She contacted our caterer to suggest menu changes on behalf of the bride, including switching from our carefully chosen menu to more traditional options that she preferred. She called our florist to cancel part of our floral order, saying that we'd changed our minds about some of the arrangements. Each of these incidents required phone calls from us to clarify what we actually wanted and to undo changes we hadn't authorized. The florist situation was particularly upsetting because my mom had canceled the ceremony arch that Marcus and I had spent weeks designing together. When I called to reinstate the order, I was told that the cancellation had been made too late and they couldn't guarantee they'd have the materials we needed. We ended up having to pay a rush fee and switch to a different design because of her interference. 2 weeks ago, my mom crossed a line that I didn't think she'd ever cross. She tried to turn Marcus against me. She called him when I wasn't around and told him that she was concerned about how the wedding planning was affecting me. She told him that I seemed overwhelmed and not like myself, and that maybe he should consider suggesting that we postpone the wedding until I was in a better headspace. She said that she'd noticed I'd been difficult to work with and unreasonable about compromises, and that maybe the stress of wedding planning was revealing some concerning aspects of my personality. Marcus was completely confused by this conversation because, from his perspective, I'd been handling the wedding planning stress remarkably well, considering the constant interference from my mother. He told her that he thought I was doing great and that most of our stress was coming from external sources, not from our relationship or the planning process itself. But the fact that my mom had tried to plant seeds of doubt in my fiancé's mind about my mental state and our relationship was the most manipulative thing she'd done yet. When Marcus told me about the phone call, I was devastated. I couldn't believe that my own mother would try to sabotage my relationship with the man I'm about to marry. Last week, I decided to limit my mom's involvement in the final wedding preparations. I told her that Marcus and I would handle all vendor communications and final details ourselves, and that she didn't need to worry about helping with those logistics anymore. I also told her that I needed her to stop calling our guests and wedding party members to discuss concerns about the wedding. My mom's reaction was explosive. She accused me of being ungrateful for all her help and selfish for excluding her from her own daughter's wedding. She said that she'd been bending over backwards to try to help me have a perfect wedding and that I was being cruel by pushing her away when she was just trying to be a good mother. She also threatened to withdraw her financial contribution if I didn't allow her to be involved in the final preparations. I told her that if she withdrew her financial support, Marcus and I would figure out how to cover those costs ourselves, but that we couldn't continue to deal with her interference and manipulation. That seemed to shock her. I think she'd been counting on the financial leverage to maintain control over our decisions. Yesterday's conversation, the one I quoted at the beginning of this post, was supposed to be a final attempt to clear the air before the wedding. My mom called and asked if we could meet for lunch to work things out before the big day. I agreed, hoping that maybe she'd realized her behavior had been problematic and was ready to apologize and step back. Instead, she doubled down on her position that she'd been right to interfere because I was making poor decisions that would reflect badly on our family. She told me that she'd been getting calls from family members who were concerned about various aspects of the wedding and that she felt responsible for protecting me from making mistakes I'd regret. When I asked her which family members had called with concerns, she was vague and said it didn't matter who specifically, but that people were talking about our choices. She said that the outdoor venue was still a mistake, that our vendors were inexperienced, that our menu was too casual, and that our decorations were going to look cheap in photos. She said that she was only trying to save me from the embarrassment of having a wedding that didn't meet people's expectations. That's when she said the quote I opened with about being worried that I was making poor decisions that would make people think less of me. I finally realized that this wasn't about her wanting to help me have a perfect wedding. It was about her wanting me to have the wedding that would make her look good to other people. I told her that I didn't care what other people thought about my wedding choices, and that Marcus and I were happy with our decisions. She said that was naive, and that whether I liked it or not, people would judge our family based on the wedding, and that her reputation was tied to mine. I said that if she was more concerned about her reputation than my happiness, then maybe she shouldn't be so involved in my wedding. She started crying and said that I was being hurtful and selfish, and that she couldn't understand why I was being so difficult when she was only trying to help. But I'd reached my limit. 6 months of criticism, manipulation, sabotage, and interference had worn me down completely. I told her that her behavior had made wedding planning miserable instead of joyful, and that I was tired of spending more energy managing her feelings than planning my own wedding. She said that if that's how I felt, maybe she shouldn't come to the wedding at all. I think she expected me to immediately backtrack and apologize, but instead I said, maybe that would be best. The shock on her face told me that she never expected me to call her bluff. She started backtracking immediately, saying she didn't mean it and that she would never miss my wedding, but I was done with the emotional manipulation. I told her that she could come to the wedding as a guest, but that she would not be involved in any wedding day logistics, she would not make any speeches or special appearances, and she would not contact any vendors, guests, or wedding party members between now and the wedding day. I also told her that if she caused any drama or problems on the wedding day itself, she would be asked to leave. My mom was horrified and said I was being cruel and unreasonable, and that I was treating her like a stranger instead of my mother. I said that she'd spent 6 months treating my wedding like her own personal event instead of respecting my choices as an adult daughter. The conversation ended with both of us upset, and I left the restaurant feeling emotionally drained but also relieved. When I got home and told Marcus what had happened, he was completely supportive of my decision to limit my mom's role in the wedding. "She's been making this process miserable for you," he said. "Our wedding should be about celebrating our love, not managing your mother's need for control." But now I'm second-guessing myself. My dad called this morning, upset about the situation and asking me to reconsider. He said that my mom is devastated and that she really was just trying to help, even if her methods were wrong. He acknowledged that she'd been overly involved but said that cutting her out entirely was too harsh and that I'd regret it later. Several family members have also called, having heard from my mom about our fight. Most are asking me to find a way to work things out before the wedding. My aunt, mom's sister, said that my mom has been calling people crying about being excluded from my wedding and that the family drama is overshadowing what should be a happy time. My grandmother called to say that whatever issues I have with my mom, I should resolve them before the wedding because family is more important than pride. Even some of my friends have suggested that maybe I should find a compromise because she's your mom and you'll only regret it if she's not fully part of your wedding day. Now I'm wondering if I overreacted. Was my mom really trying to sabotage my wedding, or was she just being an overly involved mother who wanted everything to be perfect? Am I being too harsh by essentially demoting her from mother of the bride to regular guest? Should I find a way to work things out for the sake of family harmony, even if it means dealing with more stress and interference? Part of me feels guilty because I know my mom does love me and wants what's best for me, even if her way of showing it has been problematic. But another part of me feels like she's spent 6 months making my wedding planning miserable and that I have every right to protect my mental health and my relationship with Marcus by setting firm boundaries. I'm also worried about what will happen on the wedding day itself. Will my mom cause drama? Will the family tension overshadow our celebration? Will I regret not finding a way to work things out beforehand? But I'm also worried about what will happen if I give in to family pressure and allow her to resume her previous level of involvement. Will she see it as validation that her behavior was acceptable? Will it set a precedent for how she interferes in other aspects of my marriage? Marcus has been amazing throughout this whole situation. He supported my decisions while also trying to help me see different perspectives. He's never criticized my mom directly, but he's also never suggested that I should just tolerate behavior that makes me miserable. "Whatever you decide about your mom's role in the wedding, I'll support," he told me last night. "But I don't want you to spend our wedding day walking on eggshells or managing someone else's emotions. This day should be about us."